Campaign set up in part by the Socialist Party along with other left groups and individuals looking for a way to develop that new alternative, a political voice for working people. First of all, our first speaker is going to be Dave Nellist, who's on my far right. Only literally, not politically. Dave, as comrades will know, is a member of the Socialist Party and also the national chair of the Campaign for a New Workers' Party. Then the next speaker is going to be Kevin Ovenden, who has come to join us to speak from Respect. Next to him, between him and Dave, is Mark Steele, who I don't think needs very much introduction. Comrades probably recognise Mark from the telly, but he is, as well as being a comedian, a socialist activist. And then the final speaker today will be Hannah Sell, who's a Deputy General Secretary of the Socialist Party. Thanks, Dave.
Comrades who may recall that I last spoke in this hall 7 years ago. For those of you who remember that speech, I'm staying. As Jackie said, this rally is hosted by the Campaign for New Workers' Party, and each of you will find on your seats a form which hopefully during this rally you will fill in to actually formally join the campaign and hopefully pay us some membership money, and then we'll collect those as you leave at the end of the rally itself. The idea for a New Workers' Party campaign, which we're going to talk about here today, was launched some 3 years ago at Socialism 2005, and the campaign itself first had its first formal meeting in May of 2006, and 30 months ago. In that period, it's attracted almost 4,000 individual sponsors. Almost 50 of them are members of national executives of trade unions. And earlier in the summer we hosted a debate which today is somewhat similar to amongst groups where we could actually start to talk about what is the best way forward for establishing a new workers' party. But in my contribution, both for those who've heard this type of contribution before and for those who are hearing it for the first time, I want to briefly set out why we think there is an urgency in the need to develop a new political and independent alternative for working people. Now, over the weekend you'll have heard a number of speeches about how bad the crisis of capitalism is, what 11 years of New Labour has given us, so I'm not going to repeat or try and emulate those things. I'll just do it in headlines. We've got the widest gap between the rich and the rest we've ever had in this country after 11 years of New Labour. We've been involved in 7 wars protecting the US economic and political interests around the world, which has led this country complicit not only in the deaths of hundreds of people from Britain, but of tens or hundreds of thousands in the Middle East and in Afghanistan itself. And we've got a government that's promoting, with the exclusion of all other explanations, reliance on the free market as the only way to organise the economy, and the results of that are plain to see around us. Only this morning, the chief economist of the Royal Bank of Scotland, by the way, this is a bank that put aside £1.8 billion for rewards of discretionary bonus payments to its senior staff in its investment banking division. He this morning warned us that we're looking at least some 900,000 increase in the official rate of unemployment to something like 2.7 million people, or 8.5% of the working population. So we're seeing around us an accelerating financial insecurity and rising redundancies, what the free market actually means. And the price of the current financial crisis in worldwide capitalism has been, in this country alone, hundreds of billions of pounds of subvention to the banking system, which is likely to lead to the loss of thousands of jobs within that system itself, of ordinary working people, those, for example, in Halifax and the Lloyd's TSB merchants being spoken about at the moment, earning £12,000, £14,000, £16,000 a year. The price that all of us will have to pay, unless capitalism is challenged, particularly for this and the next younger generation coming along, is in public services and in jobs and those services currently financed by the government. It's predicted that by next April, the start of the next financial year, the deficit between what the government gets in forms of taxes and what it spends in the next financial year will grow to something like £100 billion. That means in that financial year, I'm making this point slightly longer than otherwise I would have done if Mark had been here to make it himself, because we've already seen announcements of some £30 billion worth of cuts in the civil services, what's called the Gershon reviews, across every single national government department and every single council in the country. £30 billion in the current comprehensive spending review. On top of that, from next April, for every £10 that the government spends, it's only going to get £8 in taxes. You can work it out yourself. They'll be coming either to raise the taxes on ordinary working people or cut the services for which ordinary working people rely on in order to bridge that gap. And the tragedy is, there is no national serious opposition to that way of running the economy, because working people do not have an independent political voice. And one other consequence of the way in which the financial crisis for the past 12 months has erupted is those who are coming towards the end of their working life, those in their 50s and their late 50s, who are relying on a pension perhaps built on investments in stocks and shares. It wouldn't be totally unrealistic for somebody in an ordinary factory almost anywhere in this country to have worked for 40 odd years, put £50 or £60 a week away to pension, and have built a pension pot up to something like £150,000. In the last 11 months, 1/3 of the value of stocks and shares has been wiped off the FTSE index in this country. That means that pension pot has fallen by something like £50,000. Now the government have been keen to protect those with savings in the banking system by now £50,000 of guarantee. But for those relying on that pension pot to retire in the next few years, that same 1/3 fall, or £50,000 fall in their pension pots, is totally unprotected. That's what I think. Not only the banking system should be fully nationalised, but the pensions and finance industry should be fully nationalised as well. In the same way as 60 years ago our grandparents built a national health service, we should build a national finance service that looks to people who need money, whether it's buying homes or saving for their retirement, and actually protects those things away from the vagaries of the capitalist system. But that's not what we're getting from New Labour. And I know the limitations of what time we've got today, but the illustration I want to show, not what I've used before, the corrosive relationship between New Labour and big business cannot better be done than from this report which came out 2 months ago from Unison, actually written by a chap called Paul Gosling, who I think is a senior journalist on the Independent newspaper. It's all about how public services now are increasingly provided by private sector providers. Private sector providers now control £79 billion of the delivery of public services in education, in health and welfare and so on in this country. Not just PFI, for all sorts of things like outsourcing, many of which you will be familiar with. And this report talks about the public service industry having spent significant sums of money creating a sympathetic environment for increased privatisation, to the point at which there is now no serious voice in any of the three national parties against privatisation of public services. And a lot of key points in this report really worth you reading if you get the chance. But the one I just want to spend 2 minutes on is how many former cabinet and senior Labour ministers are now employed by these private firms. How many senior civil servants in this country, former senior civil servants, are now employed by these firms? I haven't got the time to go through it all, so let me do it in complete headlines.